I'm Father James Bacik, priest of the Diocese of Toledo. I was privileged to be pastor of Corpus Christi University Parish for many years. One of the great assignments I had in my life. It was a wonderful place to be. You know, when I think of Corpus Christi, I think of people. I think of Father Bob Kirtland, who helped found this parish and created wonderful relationships with the highest levels of the university, the president and deans, vice presidents, and set the stage for future developments. I think of my colleague, Dan Zach, who revitalized the Newman Club and did marvelous work. He was a whirlwind of activity and energy. And I think of Monsignor Billion and Father Jeremy Miller, who carried on the traditions after I left this region and did it so well and with a lot of energy and creativity and innovation. And I think of the many people who were involved in Corpus Christi who understood the teaching of Vatican II, that all baptized people share in the universal priesthood of Christ, that all the baptized are called to holiness, to be really good people. They're all called to build up the body of Christ and to spread the kingdom in the world. And so I saw people doing that here in this parish. I saw students involved, student leaders who came forward and used their talents and beautifully developed their gifts by having leadership positions. I think of faculty members who were committed to the well-being of this university and to the Corpus Christi, and who brought their own sense of morality and values and hard work, research, studying, teaching, preparing classes, and enriched the university in that way. You know, as you remember that the mission of Corpus Christi is to serve the University of Toledo, to help the university live up to its highest ideals. We had so many administrators who participated in liturgy here at Corpus Christi and faculty members who lived their faith in everyday life in the university setting. I think of so many generous people who made it possible for us to raise something like $10 million to establish a chair of Catholic Studies at the University of Toledo. People like Tom Murray and Lou Lovell, who gave a lot of money to help establish that chair, held by Peter Feldmeyer now, who's doing a great job. And then contributed a lot of money to build this beautiful church and facility where we were able to move in here without borrowing a penny, debt-free, the whole thing. So I think of all those generous people who did those things throughout the years. I think of the people, married couples, who taught in our marriage course and passed on their experience of marriage to young people getting ready for marriage. I think of families here who hosted international students in their homes, made them feel home, made them feel welcome. And so just so many different people that contributed. And then there's the people that served on the building committee here, led by John Graham, and people like Ken Thompson, an artist at the university, who did so much of the artwork around, involved in all of the artwork, the windows, the Blessed Sacrament Chapel, that alumni plaza out there, and the baptismal font, the windows. He was involved in all of that. Ken Thompson. And Dean Ludwig, who used his talents to build the altar in the ambo. Beautiful work that he did. In fact, he won national awards for that. And the people who became leaders of the Newman Club here and later the Catholic Student Association took positions internationally, became presidents of organizations at the national level, and so that we're able to spread good things that had happened here at Corpus Christi. And so all those faculty members who used to meet one-on-one with students, say you had engineering faculty member who had met with an engineering student and helped them move forward. So just so many good people. And I'm thinking of the deacon who served with me for a long time, Jim Monser, recently deceased, and his wife Betty, who helped prepare people for marriage, did the wedding rehearsals. Wonderful people. These are people who understood the baptismal priesthood of all the people called to build up the kingdom and spread the body of Christ. And then I think of events that on campus. I remember 9/11 after that, and how our Catholic students came forward and joined hands with the Muslim students on campus and had a beautiful rally in the mall and gave talks. And our student leaders just did a wonderful job of embracing the Muslims at that difficult time in our history. There was a young woman, Melissa Herstrom, who was shot by a police officer and killed in a brutal fashion. And our Catholic students came together and supported her, her family, her friends. They had a mass for her on campus. It was a beautiful and wonderful time. I think of the many people who, in various ways, have tried to make the university the kind of place it should be. So then there's also the whole idea of Corpus Christi, in my mind, represents the best of what Vatican II was all about. That is that the priests are to be servant leaders. And that the people are to take charge of things and take hold. I was just always inspired by young people who would take initiative and establish new things like, well, we're going to work on prison reform, or we're going to. And then I think of all of our students who went on Christian service projects, and they would go like to Haiti or someplace and interact with the poor. We'd pray with them before they went. They'd come back and we'd have theological reflection so that they could think through, well, what did you learn there from the poor people? And what can you take? Why are they poor? What structural injustices at work in their poverty situation? So we had those kind of things that always seemed important to me. And then I think of the bishops published a document on Empowered by the Spirit on campus ministry. And I always like to think of Corpus Christi as doing what the bishops said we're supposed to do. And that is, the bishop said you're supposed to form community. That is, bring people together, get them working together, collaborating, sharing their faith, worshiping together, form community. And I think that I love the liturgies at Corpus Christi. It seems to me the church architecture speaks so well to what liturgy is all about. You notice at Corpus Christi, the altar is right in the center. We have much mentioned Father Richard Vasco, who was the brains behind this whole church, internationally known church designer. He worked on the Los Angeles Cathedral, Seattle Cathedral, Milwaukee. And when he wrote a book about church architecture, he wanted Corpus Christi to be on the cover of his book, Father Richard Vasco. And so he, altar in the center, that represents Christ. We're all gathered around Christ. We're in a circle. We're part of a community. And one of the most brilliant things that historians will end up seeing about Corpus Christi Church is that in the ambulatory, there are the Catholic devotions. There's the Stations of the Cross, statue of Mary, statue of Joseph, and all of that. So we found a way to with Bosco's help, to have the altar in the center, to do what Vatican II said, we're all involved, praying, worshiping together. But we kept alive the church, wonderful church traditions of devotions, Mary, Joseph, Stations of the Cross, icons, and so on. So I think that Yeah, the church itself will go down in history as an important part of the whole development since Vatican II of church architecture. Yeah, so then empowered by the Spirit, Bishop's document back in the 80s, still in place, still operative in guiding campus ministers all over the country, said that we're supposed to form community. The other thing we're supposed to do is appropriate the faith, which means we're supposed to learn our tradition. We're supposed to, in one way or another, incorporate the Catholic tradition in our minds. We should have intellectual understanding, should have an adult understanding of our religion so we can share it with others. So the scriptures say, you've got to be ready to give a reason for the faith and hope that you have. And so part of that was having a lecture series here. We had all great thinkers from all over the country, different outlooks and opinions and approaches, all came to Corpus Christi to be part of the lecture series. And establishment of the Chair of Catholic Studies, so important, a part of that. Not only that, but again, Corpus Christi was always looking outward. So Corpus Christi had a role in developing chairs of Catholic thought at different universities around the country. University of Cincinnati, Kentucky, New Mexico, Chicago, University of Illinois at Chicago. So all different places that picked up the idea of establishing chairs of Catholic studies at their own universities. So it was always the idea of what goes on at Corpus Christi, we want to spread it, wanted to go out, influence others, and so on. And so the other thing the document said is that we're supposed to foster personal development. And I think of the students here who, I remember one young man, he wasn't a very good reader, and he wanted to be a lecturer, and so with Pam's help and others, Sister Stephanie, and they worked with him, and over time, he got more comfortable. He would do the readings with his girlfriend ahead of time, and then he became quite a fine lecturer. And I thought, there's a good example of what should happen. So that was one of the thrilling things about working with Catholic students, to see their growth and development. I was involved in the Christian leadership program and taught a credit course on principles of Catholicism to 12 scholarship students every year. And to see them grow and develop was wonderful. To see some of them became priests, some became deacons, some became pastoral ministers, some did teaching, and but they grew. They became better people as a result. Another thing we tried to do was talk about forming conscience. That's another function, Catholic ministry, campus ministry, form conscience. So part of that was having a sacrament of penance, so that people could learn to examine their conscience and use the sacrament not just a list, well, I did these 10 things wrong, but as a way of growing personally. We had a lot of lectures on moral matters, so that the students could become familiar with the Catholic moral tradition, idea of virtues and so on, and living out all of that. And so it was forming conscience, which is so important in our world. One of the things we always thought about here was, how do we prepare students to live in the real world, to take their faith in being an accountant, or being a nurse, or whatever your job was, to live out the faith in that setting, that's part of what our calling is all about. And so forming a Christian conscience was a big part of what we tried to do. And then there was the whole idea of educating for justice. And there was always a lot of emphasis here at Corpus Christi on the Christian service programs, of going out to help others, of doing things in the inner city of Toledo, and all trying to bring into their mind the whole idea of Catholic social teaching. Catholic social teaching says that all human beings are worthwhile. It puts a big emphasis on having healthy family life. It tells us that it's important to take care of the environment. It tells us that there's an option for the poor, a preferential option for the poor. So we always had the things collect food at Lent and Advent for the poor. And it was always of the mind that we've got to get our students thinking that they're privileged, they have opportunities to learn, they have skills, and they need to use it to make the world a better place, to overcome structural evil, to overcome systemic racism, to overcome sexism and consumerism. That's a big part of being a Catholic. Not just going to church and saying the rosary, but it's to take the message out into the world, which is such an important part of it. I always thought maybe we could do better with that. And it's important to carry on that tradition of social justice and get it in the student's mind. I always thought homilies need to include that. And as a way of encouraging people. And we like to raise up people who did that. We had so many good parishioners who went on service trips themselves, or lawyers who did pro bono work, or good people who shared their resources with others. And the final thing, and empowered by the Spirit, the bishop's document on campus ministry. I always like to think Corpus Christi is sort of a model of what the bishops had in mind. And so the other thing is to educate leaders for the future. And having the Newman Club and the Catholic Student Association have offered them that opportunity in so many different ways. And it's great to see how people could collaborate and have fights and get over them and have difference of opinion and compromise and find ways to work together. And so, I think of Pam Meserol and Dan Zach and others who I worked with who were very involved in the Newman Club Catholic Student Association. And I was always proud. They won many awards on campus for their student activities. They'd be at the football games, well represented. Corpus Christi, yeah. I was always proud of that when I saw them. So I guess it's people come to my mind, probably a whole lot of people I forgot to mention, and events, 9/11, Melissa Herstrom, times when we came forward and we were there when the university needed us, and then all the things that trying to live out the bishop's document in various ways. So we formed community as sort of the essential part of it. Got to have a community, people who get along, who use their talents and gifts. I always thought part of the pastor's job was to coordinate that, to spot the gifts of the people, bring them together, get them to work together for the well-being of the parish. And then out of that setting, you could do a whole lot of other things, like help people understand their faith and form their conscience and develop personally and become true leaders. So Vatican II, universal priesthood, all responsible for building up the body of Christ, everyone to do their job to spread the kingdom in the world. And I like to think of Corpus Christi as an example, a model. Not perfect. A lot of things didn't go right. We could have done a better job in many different ways. Still could do better. But the intent was there and progress is there. And to tell you the truth, I was proud to be part of that for a number of decades. Father Jeremy kindly invited me to come and give a lecture not long ago. And I started out by saying, people said, well, what advice do you have for Father Jeremy? And so I kept thinking things, well, what you should do is get involved with the life of the university. Oh, I heard you had the president over. I heard you're working out with the women's tennis club. Good. And then I said, well, you should have good music here. Music's crucial. And, oh, I see you got Luke Rosen working on the music for you. I think you should make sure you listen to the parishioners and what they're thinking. Oh, I heard you're inviting them over 5 or 6 at a time to your apartment after Mass to talk to them. So I went through a whole bunch of stuff like that and found out, I said, well, he's already doing that. So I think the future of Corpus Christi is bright. I think that it'll always have the base of committed people. Pope Francis understands that things don't happen so much from the top down. Pope Francis thinks they happen from the bottom up. And when you have committed students, you have committed faculty members and administrators, when you have a permanent community that cares about the parish, and we're trying to live out their own Catholic faith, then I think the future is in good hands. And I'd like to see the energy that's developed in the past somehow continued, carried on, lived out. And as long as we stay faithful to those fundamental ideas, all the baptized are responsible for the church. And that the pastors are servant leaders. They can't just give everything from the top down. They have to encourage the energy within the community. As long as we keep those fundamental principles of Vatican II in mind, I think the parish will do well.